The Eminence in Shadow, Episode 9, The End of a Lie. It's not only the end of a lie, but it's also the end of the Midgar Academy terrorism arc. This is the final episode in that little arc. And this episode is completely 100% serious. In fact, as far as I recall, there's not even one little single joke in this entire episode. So yeah, while the previous episodes have had a lot of comedy, this one has none whatsoever. So we start off with the Iris and her soldiers outside. They're still trapped outside because of the magical barrier. We see Princess Rose and the rest of the students inside the assembly room. And then we cut to Cid and Sherry, where Sherry has basically been able to activate the artifact that can contain the Eye of Avarice. So now she has a way to bring down the magical barrier and allow the soldiers that are outside to come in. And she mentions that her father, has told her about the secret tunnel. So she pushes like a bookcase and a door opens, and inside is a secret tunnel. And Sherry says she's going to go help her father. And before she walks into the tunnel, we get a flashback where we see Sherry and she sees her mom being brutally murdered in front of her eyes. And as she's going to her mom's body, we see her mom's murderer standing behind her. And it's obvious who it is. It's her adopted father, Lutheran. So yeah, Lutheran murdered her mom and then adopted her afterwards. And we'll find out why a bit later on. But yeah, I thought it was kind of funny that later on, there's like a twist where like it's revealed that Lutheran is the one in charge of all this. But this flashback completely gives it away because they don't even try to shadow Lutheran standing in the background behind Sherry as she's standing over her mom's dead body. Make just like a silhouette or something so you can at least give somewhat of the illusion that it's still a secret. I mean, most of you have probably already figured it out that it was her father. Not to mention the fact that like he hasn't appeared since the terrorist attack happened. Like he hasn't shown up. So it's kind of already heavily implied that he's the one leading the terrorist group. He's the one inside the giant armor. But still, at least give the illusion that you're trying to hide it a little bit. But instead, no, like in the flashback in the very beginning, we see him because they don't bother trying to shadow him in the background. Like we can completely see him. But it's supposed to come up later on as a twist that is not really a twist. And then Sherry decides to go through the tunnels by herself. And Cid's like, all right, good luck. He doesn't even come up with an excuse to bail. He's just like, go for it. And she thanks him anyways. Like she's like, thank you for helping me. I wouldn't have been able to do this without you. He's like, all right. And then she leaves. And she goes into the tunnels. I thought it was kind of like, I don't know, at least give him some kind of excuse. Like, hey, I can't go with you because of whatever reason. Obviously, the reason is because he's going to play Shadow. But at least give somewhat of an excuse to her. But no, he just doesn't even bother to help her. So yeah, we see her going through and we get shots of her from behind. Because, yeah, when it comes to Sherry, we just got to constantly have ass shots of her for some reason. Yeah, in the assembly, the students are like trying to ask Rose like, hey, we should do something. And she's like, no, there's nothing we can do. Like, we don't have our magic. A bullet or a slash will kill us. And even if we did have our magic, the leader, like, he's too powerful. Meanwhile, the terrorists that are inside the assembly guarding the students are like taking pot shots at the students with guns. They're just like shooting them. I think they're not trying to kill them, but they're just like wounding them. But they're like making a game out of it. Like, how many students can we shoot? But eventually, Sherry gets to the assembly room. She chucks the artifacts, and it connects with the Eye of Avarice, and it brings down the barrier. And as soon as it brings down the barrier, Princess Rose rushes in and kicks a guard, grabs a sword, and cuts him down. And then she motivates the other students to attack now that the magic barrier is down and they can use magic again. Yeah, as the terrorists go to fight the students, Lutheran sees the artifact on the floor and he picks it up. So now he has the complete artifact and he starts walking away. Meanwhile, New, who's also in there, is like sending messages to Shadow Garden, who are up on the roof watching this whole thing. And then eventually the terrorist groups start surrounding the princess because she mentions that even though her magic is back, the barrier has drained a lot of it. So not only was it preventing her from using her magic, it was also draining the students of their magic. So even now that they have their abilities back, their mana pool is still very low. So that's when Cid arrives and he does his superhero landing. He breaks through the glass ceiling, falls down, cuts down some terrorists, even tells Princess Rose, like, well done, my beautiful sword wielder. And then he starts cutting down the terrorists, as well as Shadow Garden. Shadow Garden shows up and surround the entire assembly. And Cid says, "We are Shadow Garden." And the Shadow Garden say, "We look in the shadows, we hunt the shadows." And it's just like this cool moment where Cid basically does a charge with his sword, and then all the Shadow Guard members just rush in and start killing the terrorist group and start cutting them down. And Princess Rose notices this, and this is when she calls all the other students to evacuate the building. She's like, get the injured and let's get the hell out of here. So yeah, as Shadow Guard is taking on the terrorists, Cid sees Lutheran leaving, and as Lutheran leaves, he turns on this gas valve, and basically he starts burning the entire academy down. So the entire academy is lit up on fire. Princess Rose and the students are able to get out. Iris shows up, and she's trying to find out what the hell happened. Iris tells her that the magical barrier went down, and then we were saved by a group calling themselves Shadow Garden. But then again, the terrorist group also went by the same name. So what's going on here? And that's when we cut to Lutheran, who's inside his office, and he pulls a bunch of books down, and he starts lighting it on fire. And then Cid shows up. Not as his shadow guys, but just as his regular Cid civilian persona. And he's sitting on a windowsill with his back towards Lutheran, reading a book. And basically he calls him out. And he's like, he knows it's Lutheran. And Lutheran's like, "How did you know?" And Cid says, "One look and it was obvious." And Lutheran's like, "Oh, the way I walk, the way I stand, you have a good eye." And Cid asks him, "Why are you doing this? You don't seem the type to be doing this kind of thing." And Lutheran explains that at one point in his life, he had reached the top of the sword fighting world. But as soon as I reached the top, I became very sick. So all my hard work went to nothing. And so all the glory he fought to attain went away just like that. And he decided to try to search for a way to cure his disease. And he found potential in this one artifact. And there was this researcher, which was Sherry's mother. She was a woman that was despised by the Academy world for being too intelligent, but Lutheran saw something in her and he funded her research. And she was working on the Eye of Avarice. And he realized that he can use this to kind of cure himself. But Sherry's mother saw that it was too dangerous and that they should hand it to the government instead. But before she can do that, Lutheran killed her. And he mentions that he started with her extremities first until he stabbed his way through her heart and gave it a good twist. She died. He walks over to the Eye of Avarice, and then that's when Sherry goes and sees her mom's dead body. And we see the same scene that we saw in the beginning. And he mentions that Sherry never realized that she was taking over for her mom's research. That the only reason why he adopted her was so that he can groom her to take over her mom's research and continue where her mom left off. And that's when Cid asks, "Is it true that you use Sherry for your own selfish ends?" And Lutheran says, "Yes, I did." "Does that anger you?" He says, "I'm not sure. I make a very clear distinction between what's important to me and what's not. As people go through life, they collect more things that have value to them. They make friends, find significant others, get jobs. But me, I trimmed the fat. And when I was done, all I had left was what I absolutely couldn't do without. And that's why I don't particularly care what happens to anything else." So that's we see why Cid acts the way he does, why certain things are important to him and other things he just doesn't care. He's apathetic about. It's because, only the things that are important to his goals does he care about. Everything else he doesn't, like friendship, relationships, stuff like that. Unless it helps him keep up his persona of being a mob character, he doesn't care. So he challenges Lutheran to a fight. They clash swords, and Cid instantly gets slashed and thrown off a building. And before Lutheran can walk away, Cid again shows up, but this time in his shadow guise. And Lutheran's like, "Shadow, like you, I am a man who lived by the sword. I can tell a lot when I come face to face with my opponents, including the fact that I am currently at a disadvantage." And I thought this wasn't supposed to be funny, but I thought it was funny that Lutheran can tell by facing Cid and the Shadow guys that he's at a disadvantage, that Cid's overpowered. But when he's facing Cid and the civilian guys, he has no idea. I guess Cid's a really good actor, but also the thing is that the anime, it makes it unintentionally funny that no one recognizes Cid as Shadow when all he has to hide is just his hood, and even his hood doesn't like cover his face. You can still see his face pretty clearly. And Cid doesn't like talk differently. I guess you can say he talks more seriously, whereas under the Cid civilian persona, he's more like aloof. But it's not like he's pulling a Christian Bale Batman where he completely changes his voice or anything like that. So you should be able to tell it's him. See, the thing is that the manga and the light novel, they work around that by having him and Shadow Garden, at least the top 7, wear masks. They wear a mask constantly. For every operation they do, they wear a mask, as well as their Shadow Garden uniform. So that I can kind of see, okay, we can't really tell who Cid is, that Cid is Shadow because of the mask hiding his face. And the only thing that you really see is his mouth. So it's basically like a Batman situation. And maybe you can say, oh, but the hair is kind of similar. But the thing is that when he's wearing the hood, all you can really see is his bangs. And it's not like Cid has a weird color or anything. His hair is basically black, which a lot of other characters have. Because the anime decided we're not going to have masks to cover our characters' faces, it just makes it seem like people are just oblivious and kind of stupid to the fact that Cid and Shadow are the same person. So yeah, Cid as Shadow is going to fight Lutheran. Lutheran, as he said, he realizes that he's underpowered when it comes to facing against Shadow. So he uses the Eye of Avarice as well as the artifact to he uses its power, and he basically kind of mutates a little bit and he becomes stronger. He kind of goes back to his peak of where he used to be, and he starts charging at Cid, and Cid just completely obliterates the crap out of him. And then we have this badass moment where Cid stabs Lutheran through the right hand, so he's unable to wield his sword with that hand. And then he immediately stabs him in the other hand. And then he stabs him in the right leg. Then he stabs him in the left leg. Basically, he's just taking out all of his limbs to incapacitate him. But before Lutheran can drop, Cid grabs him by the head and holds him up and says, what was it you said that you did to Sherry's mother? You started with the extremities and then worked her way to her heart and then twisted the sword. And then Cid does the same thing. He stabs Lutheran in the extremities, moves the sword up to his heart, and then gives it a good twist. So basically what Lutheran did to Sherry's mom, Cid does to Lutheran and kills him. And as he starts walking away, Sherry's there, and she witnesses all this. And she gives out this really terrible cry. And I don't mean terrible as in terribly voice acted. I just mean terrible as in like heartbreakingly bad. The voice actress for this part did amazingly well. I'm listening to I've been watching the Japanese version, by the way. I'm not watching the English dub. Is there an English dub? I don't know if there's an English dub for Eminence and Shadow. I know there is for Chainsaw Man. But yeah, I'm watching the Japanese audio. And the voice actress freaking nailed that scene. Like the scream is just so like real. But yeah, she starts crying over her father's dead body. And as Cid's walking away, he says that he's not going to tell her the truth because it'll be worse for her. And he jumps out the building. And then we cut to Shadow Garden, and they're looking at this newspaper where Shadow Garden has been announced as the ones behind the terrorist attacks. So now the whole world's kind of after them. And even during the fight with Lutheran mentioned to Cid that even if you strike me down, the whole world's going to be after you because I've set it up and put evidence and witnesses to make it seem like it was Shadow Garden that did it. And Cid has like this badass line where he's like, while it's true that Shadow Garden is not heroes, we're also not villains. Like we don't walk the path of heroes. We also don't walk the path of evil. We walk our own path. I don't care if the world's after us. We're just going to continue doing what we're doing. And yeah, so Shadow Garden is now enemy number 1 in the world. And we cut to Cid, who's walking out of it's like the next morning, and Cid's walking through the destruction, the rubble that was the academy, and how basically he mentions that the academy is going to go on summer break because all the buildings are destroyed. And it's kind of funny that Cid's walking through the school And that one person's like, hey, weren't you the guy who sacrificed his life for the princess and died? How are you still alive? No one seems to notice that Cid's still up and good. So I'm wondering if that's gonna come at some point. Like, it's been a while since I've read this part in the manga, so I don't remember if it's ever addressed or not. But yeah, I mean, Cid, quote unquote, died in front of his classroom, in front of Princess Rose and stuff. But here he is, alive and kicking. Is anyone gonna question it? But he sees Sherry, and Sherry is going away. She's basically gonna be going to this other city that's more technologically advanced because she has done all the research that she can here. And if she wants to further her studies, she's just gonna have to go away. So they're saying their goodbyes. And before Sherry leaves, Cid asks, what exactly are you gonna be researching on? Like, what's your next thing? And Sherry has this weird expression on her face. Anyone who's seen anime or read manga with yanderes, that expression, that psychotic expression, it flashes on her face very, very briefly. And then she goes back to like her cute, moe, innocent look. And she says it's a secret. So it's heavily implied that her next goal is going to be researching how to get revenge on Shadow and Shadow Garden. But yeah, that's how the episode ends. And yeah, I thought it was an awesome episode. Again, like, I prefer the comedic episodes just because that's like my biggest love for Eminence and Shadow is just the comedy. And we didn't get any of that here. There was no comedy. There was no moments where Cid is monologuing. Because there's a lot of I mean, you've seen my reviews for previous episodes, or you've seen the episodes themselves, where Cid will like have funny monologues about serious moments that are happening, like him getting cut down, and he mentions how like awesome this is because this is something straight out of a background mob character, or Cid getting the crap kicked out of him, and he's just saying like, this is amazing because now I get to show all my mob techniques. The monologuing helps with the comedy. There was no monologuing whatsoever. I don't believe there was even one moment where he oh, actually there was. The one moment he monologued was when he talked some stuff about how it's better if Sherry doesn't know the truth about her father murdering her mom. But other than that, yeah, no monologuing, no comedy. Which, again, for what this episode was going to be, it makes sense. Like, I'm not saying that there should have been comedy. It completely makes sense to take this episode very, very seriously just because of what's going on and stuff, especially with Sherry and that whole situation, and then the fallout with Lutheran and stuff. Throwing in comedy would have kind of undercut a lot of the heaviness in this episode, which is something that Disney and Marvel should really learn about. How many times have you seen like a Marvel movie or TV show or a Disney like Star Wars episode or movie where you have something super serious, like a very serious moment, and then they immediately undercut it with some stupid comedy? So I completely 100% understand why there was no comedy in here. And I think it was good that there wasn't. I prefer my comedic episodes rather than my serious episodes when it comes to Eminence and Shadow. But with that said, this was a really great episode. I enjoyed it a lot. It was awesome. And the series has been fantastic so far. And yeah, I love it. I think Chainsaw Man and Eminence and Shadow have been just freaking phenomenal. And yeah, I think we're almost towards the end. This is episode 9 out of 12, I believe. Yeah, I'm assuming 12 because that's what every anime is nowadays. Every anime is like 12 episodes, which is kind of a shame. It used to be like 26. Now it's 12. Everything is shorter now. Not just anime, but even TV shows are shorter. So yeah, that means we get 3 more episodes. And then Chainsaw Man's coming to an end soon. We just did episode 8, so 4 episodes left to go. I'm thinking about checking out Mob Psycho. I haven't seen any of the anime for Mob Psycho. I have been reading the manga, though. I'm on chapter 80-something. I know there's like 101 chapters, which is kind of a shame. It should have ended at 100. You know, Mob Psycho 100, ending at 100 chapters. But yeah, I've been reading the manga. It's been awesome. And I've heard good things about the anime. If anyone's been watching it, if you think I should check it out, let me know. But yeah, I kind of want to continue doing some more like anime reviews. So if you got like stuff I should check out, or movies I should check out, let me know. Yeah, if you got any recommendations for stuff I should do reviews for, or just stuff I should just watch, if you think this is good, let me know. But yeah, I'm rambling at this point. This was awesome. I love this episode a lot. It was good. And yeah, check out Eminence and Shadow if you haven't already. It's fantastic. And there you go. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope to see you next time. Take care. Later.